Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first ever episode of the Sam and Noah Show. We're here with you today on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. The rain has just stopped, and we're streaming basically live from Ottawa. I'm Sam,
Yeah, what's up? I'm Noah.
and before we get into our details of today's conversations, we're just going to introduce ourselves a little bit. So, I'm actually in grade 11. I'm still in high school, and that's all there is about me, really, other than the fact that I play hockey.
Yeah, I'm in grade 12. I go to school here in Ottawa, and right now I'm kind of getting screwed over by the virus, but I think everyone is, so
Yeah,
woohoo.
funny you should talk about that because that was actually my first topic of conversation today. And before I look at Canadian affairs, I thought, hey, why not look at international affairs? So I'm just going to begin with this interesting statement, or I guess interesting piece of news. Germany is cautiously moving forward with manageable coronavirus caseload. And essentially, what the article says is that Germany is sending people back to school, and their health minister has said that COVID 19 is now manageable. France seems to be following suit, and so is Spain, which is really interesting because Spain seems to have gotten hit almost as hard as the United States. But what I find truly fascinating is that the German health minister also noted that this could go terribly wrong, but he's not concerned with that at the moment. And this is actually from CBC News, so it's not fake news. It is real.
That is interesting. Oh my god. Yeah, so I heard about that. Well, I don't think anyone has nearly as many cases as the USA now. I think they skyrocketed to like
Yeah, the U.S.
the
has
hundreds of
really done
thousands.
something fantastic with coronavirus. They've just found a way to really not do a great job. Although I'm sure they will do a great job because they are brilliant people. But I don't know. I see this going not well. This morning, Bob Ray even tweeted on Twitter that this coronavirus thing is a global issue and that no one should really be going back into society until there is no more of the virus in the entire world. Because as we all saw, it spreaded very easily. So, as he is inferring, and I'm inferring as well, is that if we do go back into society, perhaps this will spread all over the world again just as fast.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to disagree with you there. I believe that the coronavirus will always be with us now. Like it's kind of like the flu or whatever. It's something seasonal, but it'll come back. It'll definitely be here for the rest of like everything. Um, it's just like people build an immunity against it, and I guess you only have that immunity either through a vaccine or if you've already had it and you survived. So I feel like maybe we should go outside, like not right now in our situation in Canada because we're still like on an upwards trend, but for those countries who have already reached the apex of the curve and who are slightly coming down now, if they are able to put down the proper measures and systems like staying those 6 feet apart and all that stuff, then I think that it is manageable, but it really depends how it's played out.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with that to some extent. I do think that either we'll find a vaccine or that people will become immune. But in a way, I also see a lot of people dying from this. Now, whether you think that's a good or bad thing is a different issue conversation. Uh, of course, if anyone's a true Marvel Avengers fan, they know Thanos. They're probably thinking, "Geez, this is pretty cool. Thanos is here." But I don't know. It's very hard to say because I see a cure coming before a vaccine because I mean a cure is a lot easier to develop in theory because all you have to do is just give someone medicine and if it helps cure the virus, then it works. But with a vaccine, there's a lot of other stuff you have to keep into check, such as what other repercussions are there on the human body. And so I don't know. This could be a real bender. I don't think it'll last much longer because there's some brilliant people working on it out there, but it could last pretty long.
Well, I mean, essentially, this virus is, um, it's so there has been the swine flu, and then there was also, I think it was the bird flu, and so the swine flu, I think it was also known as H1N1. That had the flu itself had like a property that made it like spread really really fast, like spread like wildfire. I remember I had it I think a couple of years ago, and then the bird flu. it didn't spread at all. Like it was not that contagious, but it was really potent or lethal, if you think of it that way. So I think this one has kind of a combination of both. It has the potency or like kind of lethality of the bird flu and the contagiousness of the swine flu, which I think is really, really dangerous. And so I hope we do develop that cure that you're saying, or even a vaccine as soon as possible, because as we're seeing already now, like the amount of deaths are insanely high. And for some, like they see compared to the number of people who have recovered, it's like a quarter of how many people have recovered. But that's still in the tens of thousands of people, and that's tens of thousands of families affected, and that's insane.
Yeah, you know what? That's true. And I do agree with you on that. But I don't know, I'm a little bit hopeful because I just searched up the graphs right now. And I mean, Quebec and Ontario aren't doing the best. They both just exceeded 10,000 cases. But good news is that you are right. One quarter or three quarters of the people are surviving. But it seems that in British Columbia, most people are recovering. They have very, very few deaths. And I guess the work that they're doing in the hospitals is truly astonishing. Not to say that the other provinces aren't doing a good job either, because if you look at New Brunswick, they barely have over 100 cases. Same thing with Nova Scotia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Newfoundland. They're all doing fantastically as well. But British Columbia is just doing a fantastic job recovering their patients.
Yeah.
So that is interesting.
Weren't they like the first people who got hit in Canada just due to their close proximity to like China and their connections? Because that's usually where most flight connections come through.
Yeah, exactly. They were in fact the first province in Canada to get the first case and to have the first death as well. That being said, the first death was from a man in his late 80s with other complications as well.
Okay, yeah.
So,
well,
I mean, of course, coronavirus doesn't help, and it is deadly. It's not to say that it's not deadly, but
yeah.
I'm sure that the people in the hospital did everything they could, as all hospital workers are doing across the globe at the moment.
I read this other article, I don't remember where it was. It might have just been a Snapchat story, to be honest, but it was something like coronavirus can cause brain damage. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, if that's true, then this is a lot more dangerous than I had predicted. But I guess it depends to the extent of the brain damage it can cause. That should really be that it can cause. Sorry, that should really be put into question, because you look at. I mean, people smoke marijuana, people drink alcohol, and that affects the brain too. I suspect
Yeah.
if it's the same, people won't be as concerned about it. But if that is the case and it does cause serious brain issues, it that is very, very dangerous, and this disease is just on a whole new level of complicated, and we should be very, very cautious about it. So yeah, it seems that there's a lot more unknowns than knowns about this virus, as that is like the case for most things on Earth nowadays. But I did hear an interesting story about how the coronavirus actually helped a man regain his memory. So apparently this man had memory loss from a concussion at work, who lived in the Wuhan region, and he forgot about his entire family for 30 years. And then he got the coronavirus. He went to the hospital, and then he realized he had the same last name as this person, and they were in the same room, and that person realized that they were siblings, and the man reconnected with his family.
That is, yeah.
And
Well, I think that's more coincidence than anything
this I
else.
saw on TikTok,
but-
so I don't know if it's true.
Okay, well, I
But-
wouldn't take anything from TikTok.
It does seem cool, but here is actually some very interesting fake news.
Okay, let's see it.
So essentially, here I'll just read the article. So Euronews really exposed whoever wrote this article, because it's an image of an excess amount of sulfur dioxide in the air in China, and the article claims that the Chinese government was lying about the amount of deaths and actually burning their people. But Euronews essentially said that in the midst of what the World Health Organization calls an infodemic of fake news around the COVID-19 coronavirus outbreak, British tabloid newspaper published images they suggested was evidence of corpse burning in Wuhan, while in reality it was just due to the lack of it was due to um, it was due to burning animals, not to burning humans, which is interesting. But what they did notice is that the levels of, methane and pollution in China were actually a lot lower than they had been previously due to the coronavirus outbreak.
Yeah, well, I guess that's from everyone getting like not going to work because of the lockdown and the entire like quarantine things. So
Hmm.
that's I guess the positive side of all this. But
Yeah. Although they also later go on to say that burning animals may not even be true. It's just the only logical thing they can think of.
or
So
maybe it's just their factories who are
yeah, it could be that too. I don't know. This is very
expulsing
confusing.
what is it? Sulfur dioxide?
Yeah, sulfur dioxide. It,
Sulfur dioxide is pretty dangerous.
I'll
But
be honest with you. I didn't even know that when you burnt humans, it released sulfur dioxide.
I don't think it does, mostly
So-
because we are carbon-based life forms.
Yeah, I would have thought it would release some other.
So that's
compound.
yeah, no, that's not going to happen. However, again, I don't have any scientific evidence to back me up right now because I'm not looking at any like papers or anything, but I'm assuming that we're carbon-based life forms and that we didn't turn into boron-based life forms.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think sulfur dioxide is actually one of the components of acid rain, and China has been seeing acid rain already for a long time. So
That is true. It seems that we have really uncovered what the sulfur dioxide crisis is about. But yes, the article basically says that they would have had to burn around 30 million bodies to release that much sulfur dioxide. So it seems very unlikely, to say the least.
That's just
Yeah. So I mean, Windy.com released the tweet.
well, this
an
has to be
article.
a very trustful news source, right? Windy.com.
Of course, we all check Windy.com in the
Yeah.
morning to see our news. But here's Speaking of interesting news that may or may not be credible, this website called LiveScience.com just posted an article saying that the longest animal ever was discovered in a deep sea canyon off of the Australian coast. But the question is, does it really count as one animal though? And here's why. It's a siphonophore, a translucent stringy creature that, like corals, is made up of smaller crittals. So does that mean it's multiple creatures, or is it one creature?
I don't know, but this sounds like a BuzzFeed article to me.
You know what? It sounds like that to me too. But this seems pretty legit, shockingly.
Well, I mean, I think the oceans and the seas are really one thing that we haven't managed to fully discover yet, and I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I like how we jumped from coronavirus to this, but I watched a video the other day, and it was like sturgeon fishing.
Yeah.
And they caught this massive sturgeon, and I was like, how can you catch this thing? Is like a dinosaur. So like, yeah, I totally believe that there's bigger creatures down there in the ocean. Like, I wonder what's at the bottom of Marianas Trench. Like, I mean, the pressure must be so immense. The things down there, like, must be a climate. It's like living on a different planet or something. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, I truly find it shocking that we are trying to discover things in space, yet there's so much of our own planet we do not know. That's not to say that studying space is bad. I think that what SpaceX is doing is fantastic, and that, all the space agencies around the world are providing great contributions. That's a hard word to say. To our society. But, I would love to see us truly discover the biggest creature on Earth. And I will bet that there's a bigger creature than this creature that was discovered in the deepest parts of our ocean.
Most likely, yeah.
Yeah. BBC Planet Earth 2 and the BBC Blue Planet 1 and 2 do a fantastic job illustrating and discovering and demonstrating all the different varieties of organisms in nature. But what's truly fascinating is that they managed to get pretty deep down. They see some pretty cool looking creatures that essentially just glow in the dark down at the bottom of the ocean.
Is that the show with David Attenborough as like the
Yes, it
voiceover? Oh, I love that man.
Yeah, David Attenborough is the best. Yeah.
I aspire to be him.
If you guys want us to get David Attenborough on this podcast, just let us know. You can email us, and we'll try and get David Attenborough on our podcast for a little bit of nature ASMR.
Yeah, that's the only reason why.
So now on to other news. As we all know, today is April 19th, which means that April 13th, one of the unluckiest days in history, was just 6 days ago. But what is truly fascinating is that April 14th, in my opinion, is actually worse than April 13th. And here's why. Okay, in 1912, the Titanic sank on April 14th.
Okay.
In 2009, on April 14th, North Korea threatened to restart a nuclear warfare. In 2014, on April 14th, 276 schoolgirls were abducted by Boko Haram in Nigeria.
Wait, go back to the North Korea. When was that?
2009.
Oh my, okay. That was a while ago. Okay.
Yeah, it was a few years ago.
And then
11.
what about the abductions again?
Oh yeah, so 276 schoolgirls were abducted by Boko Haram in Nigeria.
Who's
On
that?
the April 14th, 2014.
Who's Boko Haram? Is this like some leader or like some terrorist group or something?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I was just searching up why April 14th was the worst on Google.
Yeah.
And then 1865, Abraham Lincoln got shot by John Wilkes Booth. And in 1935, on April 14th, Black Sunday dust storms descend upon the Central Plains.
Okay, well, it's sounding like a pretty grim day to me. Now, why is April 13th a competitor? Like,
Okay, well, here's the issue, right? So the number 13, to a lot of people, is seen as an unlucky number.
well, yeah, I see like buildings everywhere without the 13th floor.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
And here's my point. This, in my opinion, and I'm not trying to discredit anybody's superstitions, but in my opinion, dates and things don't matter. And this just goes to prove it, that all this terrible stuff also happened on April 14th. Now, this is not to say that bad things don't happen on the 13th of any month, but being the day after the 13th, I think this should just goes to show that bad things can happen on any day, and that we shouldn't associate this bad luck and this misfortune with a number, especially as the 13th. Because I have some friends who are born on the 13th, and
That's unlucky, man.
everyone's like, it's unlucky, but no, it's incredibly lucky. That person was born that day. It's shocking that people can be born. There's so much going against us in nature.
I think the earth is blessed and lucky to have those people born on that day. It's a miracle of nature.
Well, on any day, it's a miracle of nature. You're competing against like 10,000 other little to get to that egg.
Okay, let's keep it PG for
For
family-friendly
listeners.
viewers. I might have to beep that out in post. Anyways. Yeah, so I guess you're right. April 14th, well, I mean, every day is an unlucky day, but I think people need to not look at the bad things and look at the good things in life. Like, I think there's a study somewhere out there. I mean, there's a study for everything, but there's a study that's like people are more likely to notice the bad things compared to the good things. Like, you could do a bunch of really nice things for someone and then say something bad to them at the end of the day, and for that day, the bad thing is what they're going to remember. They're going to forget everything nice you did for them. So, I mean, I think people are just negative as just themselves, and people need to be more positive and not worry about unlucky days.
And I guess that kind of raises the question, like, is man evil?
Is man evil?
Does man have kindness, or is all that superficial? Because here's my question. Does man do good things to get what he wants? Or does he do it out of goodwill and good heart? Because there's a lot of studies that show, like, hey, if you're the only person in the room and you see someone else getting attacked, you won't do anything. And if there's a bunch of other group of people, there's the bystander effect, where if you see someone getting attacked on the street, you won't do anything because you think other people will do something.
Oh, yeah. Well, as a lifeguard, I would say it's less about thinking someone else is going to do something, but more out of like a self-defense mechanism. You don't want to get hurt. You don't want to be part of it. Like, maybe people who are really outgoing and maybe extroverted and who really are confident in their abilities to prevent something from happening, they might hop into that fight and try to pull it apart like referees at an NHL game. But I think most people just don't want to have any part of it. They're like, okay, I don't really want to get hurt. Now, if it comes to calling 911 and people don't do it because they think others are going to do it, no, I think that's just stupid. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. It's just stupid. Like, call 911. Yeah,
it's fascinating you should say that, and especially because you're a lifeguard and, you see this type of thing every day, and your job is essentially to save people.
Prevent, promote, and preserve life, but yeah. We'll stick with save. That sounds cooler.
But it's interesting you say that, because there's a lot of cases and times where you see people not call the police, and just as you'd said before, because to defend themselves. Like when some people are doing bad things, they don't want to snitch per se on each other, because they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to get hurt. They want to be a part of a group of people. They don't want to lose that group. They don't want to lose that self-identity.
Yeah.
So all that's interesting. I find that very fascinating to uncover the human's mind. Well, let's get back to some good news. It seems as though that because our curves are flattening, we might actually get to go to school again next year. Now, I know not everybody likes going to school, but at least it's something to do.
Yeah, well, I would kind of like to go to school, especially since I'm going to university next year.
That's true.
So I think it'd be pretty important. I don't want to start off my first semester doing online courses, especially since there's that Frosh for engineer students. That's apparently like a cult, I've heard, and it's apparently like the best thing ever. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, so I hope that doesn't get canceled. But I'm hoping that our actual school, like our current school year, like that we don't go back to school, because I don't know, I don't want to go back and then we go do tests and then we realize that everything we learned online is a lie, and that we actually suck at teaching ourselves stuff.
Yeah, you know what? I have that fear too, because I just wrote a test the other day, and I was almost positive I knew everything perfectly well. And then I was looking back at my test, and I was like, wow, maybe I don't know any of this at all. So yeah. I know how you feel.
I had a test too, and we got a question, and it took my dad, a physicist, 15 minutes to figure it out on his own. And it was something we hadn't even covered that yet, like in that class. It's something from a previous class, and it's just, it's not fun. Like when you realize, okay, everything's going well. I'm doing all the homework. I'm learning. I'm looking at all the YouTube lessons, and then you get hit with this test, and it's just like, how do I even approach this question? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, example here, solve log base 2x plus log base 4x plus log base 8x plus log base 16x equals 25. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I won't bore our listeners with stupid math, but it just came out of nowhere when we're doing derivatives usually.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think it's a good idea to cut our course time down to 3 hours per week. Personally, I think we should keep it at 5 hours per week. But I think that it should be simplified, because there's some things that is really difficult, where it's really difficult to teach yourself how to do it. And the reason why I'm saying keep it 5 hours a week is so that we can finish early if we still cut the material. I don't disagree with cutting the material and only hitting the main key concepts. But I think that instead of, keeping us inside doing schoolwork for maybe an hour a day or whatever, 3 hours a day per se, or 3 hours per class, however long that takes, we should just finish this earlier, put it aside, and then be able to go and just chill outside with our families in our backyards, 6 feet away from other people who aren't related to us.
Well, I hope there's no one who isn't related to you in your backyard, just for no reason.
Yeah, well, I suspect that wouldn't happen. Usually it doesn't. It has happened, though, I have to say.
Oh, no.
Yeah, scary times. So
Man, this.
yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I'm praying that this is over soon.
Yeah, me too. I got a bunch of rock climbing stuff and I wanted to go rock climbing, but everything's shut down and now all the rock climbing stuff is just in my room, just lying around and I can't even do anything and everything is just falling apart.
I know. And we were gonna build a rock climbing wall too, and then Home Depot shut down because it's non-essential anymore.
The holes are way too expensive too, either and too. Oh my god.
Yeah, this goes out to all rock climbing manufacturers. Lower the price of your equipment, please.
Please,
And
just
thank
for
you.
me and Sam, and on behalf of all the other rock climbers in the world.
We may or may not give you a free promo if you do that.
Yeah,
Likely will, though.
do it.
Speaking of which, on jobs that have been cut down, what I have noticed is that a bunch of small businesses and local businesses in Ottawa, such as breweries and butchered shops, have been doing a lot better because people don't want to go to these huge grocery stores and get in contact with so many people, so they prefer to go to local things. Like, I'll take Dominion City Brewing Co., for example. They do deliveries now. They deliver their beer to their clients, or clients can come into their shop. But essentially, because they don't it's not like a huge superstore like you would have at Walmart. It's a lot smaller. People feel more comfortable going there, and they're buying locally, which is great because these companies don't get enough credit for their fantastic products that they produce and that they sell for very reasonable prices.
hmm Well, I honestly I thought they were the locals, the small businesses at least weren't doing too well because of just the lack of customers. But I guess the argument that you point out is could be very much true.
I mean, I'm sure this doesn't apply for all small businesses, but for the ones that it does apply to, I'm very thankful that it does apply to them because they're finally getting the recognition they deserve.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like our society has become too commercialized and too, I don't want to say capitalistic, but capitalistic just because of the fact that we have just these like couple major companies who are like who own like all the grocery stores and who own Costco, like Metro, all that stuff. And and even Tim Hortons, like that's a huge brand that's just like fast food across entire Canada. But what I'm trying to say is, when I went to Europe this summer, I think it was, we would get our bread and we would get our food from the corner store, like from a bakery that's down the road, and this is all like made on the spot. This is all fresh. And it's at a reasonable price too. So I think that these big industries and these big companies are just killing all these small businesses and kind of in that way decreasing the quality of their products. But I think we should leave this argument for another episode because we have already reached the 30-minute mark. And
Yeah, I guess that concludes our first ever episode of the Sam and Noah Show. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you next week.